The sun was sharp over the Lagos market. Traders shouted prices for peppers and rice. The smell of fried fish filled the air. In the middle of the noise, Adana stood in a worn-out gown with dark sunglasses. Her left hand held a white walking stick. Her right arm held baby Cynthia close to her chest. The child's small fingers clutched the fabric at her mother's shoulder. "Adana," Sam said, voice low but hard, "find your way from here." She thought she misheard. "Sam, what did you say?" "I said it's over." He did not meet her eyes, even though she could not see him. "Don't come back to my house." People slowed down around them. A woman carrying tomatoes paused and stared. Adana's heart kicked in her chest. Her walking stick trembled in her grip. Cynthia began to cry, a thin wail that cut through the market noise. A perfume drifted close, warm, sweet, and expensive. A woman's laughter touched the air. "Come, handsome," the woman said, her voice smooth. "Let me take care of you." Adana knew the voice was speaking to her husband. She held her breath. She believed Sam would defend her. He would say, "This is my wife." He would say, "Respect her." He would stand beside her like before. But Sam stepped away. "Janet," he said to the woman, his words quick and nervous, "lead the way." Adana felt the ground tilt. "Sam, please," she said, chin shaking. "Don't do this. We have nothing but each other. Think of Cynthia." The baby's cry rose higher. She bent her head and kissed the child's hair. "Please." Sam's answer came like a door slamming. "You and your mother are my past," he said to the crying child. "I'm done." He turned. Footsteps. The perfume moved away with him. A car door shut. An engine started. Adana stood very still in the noise and light. Her walking stick slipped and tapped the ground. People whispered. Someone said, "Ah, God will judge." Adana took a breath that tasted like salt and smoke. Her phone buzzed in the pocket of her gown. She froze. It was unknown number. She pressed the answer button with shaking fingers. "Hello," she whispered, hours earlier. That morning had been quiet, almost tender. A slow harmattan breeze moved the curtain in their small room in Ogba. The room held a thin mattress, a plastic fan, a wooden chair, and a kettle with a broken handle. On the wall, a photo from the University of Lagos showed two young graduates grinning under blue sky, Sam in his gown, Adana in hers, their arms linked, the future wide and bright. "Hold, Cynthia," Adana said, feeling for the edge of the bed. Sam placed the baby in her arms with a sigh. He had come home late from night driving. The old taxi he drove for someone else rattled like a tin can. He said the clutch was going, again. He said the owner was shouting, again. He said the roads were tired, and so was he. Adana rocked the baby. She had learned to count steps from bed to chair. She had learned the sound of water boiling and when to switch off the gas. She had learned the shape of her new world by touch. Once, her world had been different. She had been careful in the insecticide company, but chemicals sometimes broke rules. One day, a faulty hose coughed, and a sharp cloud kissed her eyes. 3 days of burning, 2 weeks of darkness creeping in. An operation was too expensive. By the 4th month, the darkness stayed. She named it, but did not say the name out loud. Mama Chica, their neighbor, often knocked with soup or bread. "Chai, my daughter," Mama Chica would say, pressing a warm bowl into her hands. "It is well." Adana would smile and say, "Thank you." She would not cry until the door closed. Sam stopped smiling. He ate quickly and stared at the wall. He counted their debts, their rent, the price of Cynthia's milk, and the price of fuel. He counted the days back to the graduation photo, and it hurt. He was 29 and felt much older. He told himself he was carrying a mountain alone. "You should rest," Adana said that morning. "Sleep a little." He gave a dry laugh. "Rest? With what money?" Silence spread between them like a sheet. After a while, Sam cleared his throat. "Let's go to the market," he said. "Fresh air will help you think less. We need rice and kerosene." Adana nodded. "Okay." In her heart, she felt a small gladness. Fresh air, crowds, noise, life. She dressed slowly. Green gown, because Sam once said it made her look like a leaf after rain. Dark sunglasses that hid her empty gaze. She lifted the white walking stick, a new friend with a clean, honest voice on the ground, and whispered to Cynthia, "We will buy fruits today." Sam led them out. The taxi's door creaked, but the engine caught. On the road, Danfo buses honked and bullied. Street hawkers ran between cars, waving groundnuts, plantain chips, phone chargers. Adana turned her face to the window and felt the sun on her skin. She counted the turns. The engine coughed at each stop. At the market, Sam held her elbow as she stepped down. The ground felt uneven and hot. Voices poured over them. They moved through a river of people, cloth sellers calling Ankara, lace, pepper women arranging red hills, a man hitting a piece of metal into the shape of a spoon. They bought onions and rice. They priced tomatoes. Cynthia reached a tiny hand toward a hanging balloon. Adana laughed softly and kissed her again. For a moment, it felt like they were still the couple in the photo, just tired and saving. Nothing more. Then Sam's hand slipped from her elbow. She heard it before she understood it, a new voice, playful and bright. A woman. Her heels clicked like coins on the ground. She smelled like vanilla and new cars. "What is a handsome man like you?" the woman said, doing with a poor blind woman. The words cut. Adana held still. She told herself Sam would laugh it off. He would pull her closer. He would say, "This is my wife, Adana." The woman moved closer. "Follow me," she purred. "Let me spoil you." Adana lifted her chin steady. "Sam," she said, calm at first. "We should finish and go." But Sam was no longer calm. A door had opened in his mind, a door that whispered of money, rest, and clean shirts. He thought of the old taxi and the angry owner. He thought of the nights on Third Mainland Bridge, the yellow lights, the long lines of red brake lights. He thought of himself as a man trapped under a heavy sack, and this new voice as a hand saying, "Drop it and breathe." He looked at Janet's painted smile. He did not see the thin crack behind the paint. "Janet," he said, already using her name like a secret. And then he did the thing he would wish every day to undo. He turned his back on the woman who had once stood in a lab to support them, who had held his hand at the graduation gate, who now stood in a bright market with a baby crying into her shoulder. "Adana," he said, his voice a stranger's, "It's over. Don't come back." The sound of their life broke like a plate on concrete. Adana did not scream. She could not. She heard the car door. She heard the engine. She felt a wind as something big rolled away. Her chest rose and fell too fast. She bent to pick up her walking stick, but her hand brushed only dust. Cynthia's cry turned hoarse, then softer, like she was running out of sound. A gentle hand touched Adana's shoulder. "Sister," a trader murmured. "Sit." She guided Adana to a wooden stool. "Take water." A cold sachet touched Adana's palm. Adana held it but did not drink. Her ears echoed with Sam's last words. A fly landed on her wrist. She did not move. Her phone buzzed. She flinched and almost dropped it. Unknown number. Her thumb shook over the screen. She pressed accept and lifted it to her ear. "Hello?" Her voice was a thread. "Good afternoon," a calm male voice said. "Am I speaking with Miss Adana Okoro?" "Yes," she whispered, confused and scared. "Who is this?" "My name is Barrister Donald," the voice said, steady like a firm hand. "I'm calling on behalf of Mega Oil Company about your late parents. We need to speak about an investment they made." The market faded to a far hum. Adana gripped the phone tighter. "Sir," she said, breathless. I can't see. I'm at the market with my baby." There was a pause. Then the voice softened. "That's okay, ma'am. Please tell me the name of the market where you are. Stay where you are. I'm sending a driver right now." Adana swallowed. Her lips were dry. She turned her face toward the noise, toward the heat, toward the unkind empty place where her husband had stood, and she said the market's name. "Good," Barrister Donald said. "We are on our way. It's important. It's about your parents' shares and what they left for you." The line clicked quiet. Adana lowered the phone and held Cynthia close. The baby's breath warmed her neck. Somewhere far off, a siren cried, or maybe it was just the wind. Behind her sunglasses, tears gathered and slipped down, hot and clean. She waited, still, shaken, and suddenly standing at the edge of something she could not yet name. 15 minutes after the call, a smooth hum of an engine rose above the market noise. Adana heard it before anyone spoke to her. "Madam Adanna?" A polite male voice called from somewhere near. "Yes?" She tightened her hold on Cynthia. "I'm Chuka, the driver Barrister Donald sent. I'm here to take you to Mega Oil Company." The stool beneath her felt like it had turned to air. "So soon?" she asked, her voice soft. "Yes, ma," Chuka replied. "The barrister said it was urgent." "Please, may I help you to the car?" A few traders who had been watching stepped forward. "She was here when her husband left with another woman," one murmured, shaking her head. "God will fight for you." "My sister." Adana nodded weakly, unsure whether to smile or cry. She rose, using her walking stick to feel for the ground as Chuka gently guided her. Cynthia shifted in her arms, a small whimper escaping her lips. "Don't worry, baby," Adana whispered to her daughter. "We're going somewhere new." The air outside the market smelled less of fried food and more of gasoline. When Chuka opened the car door, the faint scent of leather and air freshener drifted out. She lowered herself onto the seat, cradling Cynthia tightly. The door shut with a muffled thump. The world outside began to fade as the car pulled away. "Madam," Chuka said after a few minutes of silence, "the barrister is a good man. You are safe." Those words carried weight. Adana had been touched by too many hands of strangers since losing her sight, some kind, some cruel. Now, she clung to the hope in his reassurance. As the car moved, Adana counted the humps in the road. She recognized the sound of Hawker's shouts fading into the distance, then the steady whoosh of traffic on a larger road. Her thoughts turned to Sam. She could still hear his voice, cold, final. How could a man who once promised her forever cut her off in a single sentence? She remembered the way he held her hand on their wedding day, how he once prayed over her head when she was pregnant with Cynthia. Was all of it a lie, or had he changed only after life became hard? She brushed away a tear with the back of her hand, careful not to wake Cynthia. When the car slowed and turned, Chuka spoke again. "We're entering Victoria Island now, Ma. The company's head office is ahead." Adana straightened. She had not been to Victoria Island in years, not since her eyes could see. Back then, the roads were clean, the buildings tall and shining like glass candles. She wondered if it still looked the same. The car rolled to a stop. The door beside her opened, and a deeper, steadier voice replaced Chuka's. "Mrs. Adana?" "Yes," she answered, lifting her chin. "This is Barrister Donald," the voice said warmly. "You're safe now. May I help you out?" She handed him her walking stick and took his arm. His hand was firm, guiding her with a care that didn't make her feel helpless. She could tell he was taller than most men, his steps slow but confident. They entered a building where cool air replaced the Lagos heat. The floor under her shoes was smooth marble. Her ears caught the soft ding of an elevator. Inside the elevator, Donald spoke again, his tone gentle but serious. "Your parents invested in Mega Oil 20 years ago. They bought shares when the company was small. The shares have grown in value, and now they are worth $500 million. Adana froze. The numbers felt unreal. 500 million? Yes, Donald confirmed. You are the sole heir. The board has agreed it is time to transfer it to you. Her fingers tightened around Cynthia. Sir, I don't even have transport money sometimes. How can this be real? Donald's voice softened even more. It's real, Adana. I have all the documents. Once you sign, the funds will be transferred into your new account. We can also arrange any personal help you need. The elevator chimed, and the doors opened. They stepped into a quiet office space. A woman's heels clicked toward them. Welcome, Mrs. Adana, she said politely. Please, come this way. They guided her into a private room where a large table sat in the center. The faint scent of polished wood and paper filled the air. Donald placed a thick folder before her and began explaining each document, carefully translating the legal terms into simple language. With each signature she placed on the papers, her life felt like it was shifting, moving from the dim corners of struggle toward something bright, something she had not dared to imagine. When it was done, Donald cleared his throat. You will need new clothes, a safe place to stay, and perhaps medical treatment for your eyes. We can arrange everything. Adana exhaled shakily. I don't know how to thank you. Don't worry about thanks, Donald replied. Just know that today, your life changes. By evening, Donald had taken her to an upscale boutique. The air smelled of fresh fabric and perfume. Gentle attendants helped her choose dresses, shoes, and a small gold bracelet for Cynthia. Adana touched each fabric, imagining the colors. From there, they went to a quiet hotel with a soft bed, clean sheets, and the hum of an air conditioner. Cynthia slept peacefully in the cot beside her. Adana lay awake, listening to the city's distant hum and wondering if this was all a dream. Somewhere, she knew Sam might be looking for her, or maybe he was too busy with Janet. The thought no longer hurt as sharply. She had something else now, a door opening to a future she could not yet see, but could feel in her bones. The next morning, Donald arrived early. "I've booked your flight to London," he said. "A specialist there will examine your eyes. If the surgery is possible, you could see again." Adana covered her mouth, trembling. "See? Again?" "Yes," he said simply. "We leave tonight." She held Cynthia close, her heart pounding. The thought of seeing her daughter's face for the first time brought fresh tears. As she packed the few new clothes she owned, she whispered to herself, "This is the beginning." But somewhere across Lagos, in a small rented room, Sam Okoro was about to wake up to a shock he never saw coming. The plane's cabin hummed softly as it sliced through the night sky. Adana sat by the window, though she could not see the stars outside. Cynthia slept in her arms, her small breaths warm against Adana's chest. Beside her, Barrister Donald quietly reviewed some papers, occasionally glancing at her to make sure she was comfortable. Every so often, she would shift in her seat, trying to calm the racing thoughts in her mind. London. Surgery. The possibility of seeing again. It felt too big, too fast. Part of her feared waking up to find it had all been a dream, and she was still standing in that market, blind and abandoned. Donald's voice cut through her thoughts. "We'll be landing in about 6 hours," he said gently. "You should rest." She smiled faintly. "I'm not sure I can sleep. My mind won't stop running." "That's normal," he replied. "But try. Tomorrow might be the first step to getting your sight back." When they arrived in London, the cold air wrapped around Adana like a new kind of fabric, crisp, sharp, and clean. Donald guided her through the airport, Cynthia strapped snugly to her with a baby carrier. The hotel was quiet, and she slept deeply for the first time in months. The next morning, they were at the hospital before sunrise. The scent of antiseptic filled the air, and the low beep of distant machines reminded her of the last time she had been in a hospital right after the chemical accident that took her sight. The surgeon, a calm British-Nigerian woman named Dr. Essin, examined her eyes with patient care. "We can operate," she finally said, her tone carrying a cautious hope. "It will be delicate, but I believe you have a strong chance of regaining your sight." Adana's breath caught. "I could see again?" Dr. Essin smiled. "Yes, but it will take time to heal, and you must be prepared. It might not be perfect vision, but you will be able to see your daughter, the world, life." The surgery was scheduled for the next day. Donald stayed with her every step through the pre-surgery tests, through the long hours of waiting. As she lay on the hospital bed with an IV in her arm, she gripped his hand. "Why are you doing all this for me?" she asked softly. Donald looked down at her, his eyes kind. "Because someone has to stand with you when life tries to knock you down. You've had enough of that." Her lips trembled. "Thank you." The surgery felt like no time at all. One moment she was lying in the bright, sterile room, and the next, she was waking up in a recovery ward. Her eyes covered in thick bandages. Donald was there, holding Cynthia, who was busy playing with the edge of his tie. "It's done," he said quietly. "You'll rest, and in a few days, we'll remove the bandages." Those few days felt like weeks. She listened to London's different sounds, the distant rumble of buses, the chatter of strangers in accents that felt foreign yet warm. Donald took her for short walks, guiding her gently as they moved through the hotel lobby or sat outside with warm drinks. Finally, the day came. In a small, bright room, Dr. Essin stood beside her bed. "Are you ready?" the doctor asked. Adana's heart thudded. "Yes." Donald moved closer, one hand resting on her shoulder. Cynthia babbled softly in his other arm. The bandages began to loosen. Light soft at first, then growing seeped in like dawn breaking after a long night. Slowly, the doctor said, "Open your eyes." She did, shapes blurred at first, then sharpened. Colors she had only remembered in dreams came alive. She blinked against the brightness until the world steadied, and then she truly saw her little girl for the first time. Cynthia's round cheeks, her wide, curious eyes, her small mouth opening in a smile when she realized her mother was looking at her. Tears rolled freely down Adanna's cheeks. "She's beautiful," she whispered. Donald was smiling too, though his eyes glistened. "Told you so." Back in Lagos, Sam Okoro was having a very different morning. He woke late, expecting Janet's voice or perhaps a breakfast tray. Instead, there was silence. Her perfume was gone from the room. So was her bag. So was his phone charger. He tried her number. "The number you are trying to call is switched off." Frowning, he checked his wallet. Empty. The last of the cash he had kept hidden was gone. Panic began to tighten his chest. He thought of the taxi, the one he had already sold at her, urging to pay for customs duties. He had nothing now. No car, no wife, no money. He paced the room, convincing himself she would come back. Maybe she had gone to buy something. Maybe... A knock at the door interrupted him. He opened it to find a man in a dark suit holding an envelope. "Mr. Sam Okoro?" "Yes?" "You've been served." Sam stared at the divorce papers in his hand, his mind refusing to process the neat legal print. Adana. Divorce. How? Days later, while trying to think of his next move, Sam heard his neighbor's radio playing the news. The blind woman who inherited $500 million from her late parents' investment in mega oil, surgery abroad successful, now back in the country. Sam froze. The announcer's voice continued, but he only heard fragments. Adanna Okoro. Regained sight. Seen with Barrister Donald. The radio crackled into a photo description. Adana in an elegant dress. Cynthia in her arms, smiling for cameras. Sam's knees went weak. He slid to the floor, gripping the divorce papers. In London, Adana was packing her bags for the flight back to Lagos. She moved slowly, still overwhelmed by the fact that she could now see the deep brown in her daughter's eyes, the rich fabric of her green gown, the careful stitching in Donald's suits. As she zipped her suitcase, Donald stepped into the room. "Ready to go home?" She nodded, though her voice held a note of uncertainty. "Yes, but I know home won't feel the same." He gave her a reassuring smile. "Sometimes, that's a good thing." What she didn't know was that Sam's troubles were only beginning, and the next time they crossed paths, the power between them would have shifted completely. The Lagos heat pressed down like a heavy blanket the day Adanna's flight landed. Cameras flashed at the airport, entrance news outlets eager to capture the woman whose story had gripped the city. Adanna stepped out in a flowing blue gown, sunglasses shielding her still healing eyes. Cynthia perched comfortably on her hip. Beside her, Barrister Donald carried her handbag and spoke briefly to the reporters before guiding her to a waiting black SUV. The ride from the airport was quiet. Adana looked out the tinted window, seeing familiar streets for the first time in years. Yet they felt different now, less like home. More like memories that no longer held power over her. "Where to first?" Donald asked. Adana hesitated. "Not home. I have no reason to go back there." Her voice was steady. "Take me to the boutique. I want to get a few things. And then maybe we'll talk about my next steps." Across town, Sam Okoro sat in a dim room with a single plastic chair and a mattress on the floor. His clothes were crumpled, and his eyes had the dull look of a man who hadn't slept well in days. Janet's number was still unreachable. He had checked the bus station twice, hoping to see her by some miracle, but each time he returned with nothing but dust on his shoes. The money from the taxi sale was gone. Rent was due in a week. His stomach growled as he drank water to quiet it. He still couldn't believe Adana had sent him divorce papers. Adana, who once couldn't take a step without calling his name. A knock at the door startled him. When he opened it, 2 police officers stood there with stern expressions. Behind them was Mr. Clements Okeke, the owner of the taxi Sam had sold. "Mr. Okoro," one officer said, "you are under arrest for breach of trust and criminal sale of property that does not belong to you." "Wait, I can explain," Sam began, but the officers were already pulling him forward. His protest turned into a plea. "Please, give me time. I'll find the money." Clemence's voice was like a hammer. "You had your time. You disappeared with my car and my money. Now you'll face the law." At the station, the charges were read. Sam's mind spun. The option was clear: either return the taxi or pay its full market value. But he had neither. Within days, the court sentenced him to 20 years imprisonment, pending repayment. The iron gates of Kirikiri prison clanged shut behind him, sealing his fate. Inside, word spread quickly about the taximan who followed a woman and lost everything. The older inmates shook their heads. The younger ones laughed. Sam kept to himself, replaying that afternoon at the market over and over until it became a punishment in itself. One day, in the prison yard, a fellow inmate smirked. "That Janet woman, you know she's done this before, right? First husband, same trick. Sold his car, vanished." The words hit Sam like a final blow. He sat on the cold ground, staring at his calloused hands, wondering how greed had blinded him more than any chemical ever could. Meanwhile, Adanna's life was shifting into something unrecognizable. Within weeks, she had bought a mansion in Lekki, its white walls gleaming in the sun. She also acquired the largest supermarket and fabric store in Lagos, hiring managers to run them while she learned the business side. Donald became a constant presence, attending meetings with her, ensuring her legal affairs were in order, and spending quiet evenings talking over dinner. He told her about his late wife, Amara, and how he had buried himself in work to survive the grief. She told him about the loneliness of blindness, the sharp edges of betrayal, and the strange weight of sudden wealth. Slowly, those conversations grew into something warmer. A year after her surgery, Donald proposed. They married in an extravagant ceremony in Lagos. Cynthia, now 5, was the flower girl, her bright smile lighting up every photo. From inside his prison cell, Sam saw the wedding pictures in a tattered newspaper passed around by inmates. He pressed the page to his forehead and wept. 3 years later, Adana and Donald welcomed a baby boy, Williams. The joy in her eyes as she held him made her remember the day she first saw Cynthia. Her life had come full circle in a way she could never have imagined in that market. But her compassion remained intact. When Williams turned 1, she quietly paid off the value of Clement's taxi. The day Sam was released, he stepped out into the sunlight to find Adana waiting with Cynthia. His lips trembled. "Why are you doing this? After everything?" She met his gaze without anger. "Because I am not a wicked person. You are still Cynthia's father. But you will live with the consequences of your actions. I can't undo the past, Sam, but you can learn from it." In that moment, Sam understood the full cost of the decision he had made in the market years ago, and the truth that forgiveness didn't erase regret. But fate wasn't done teaching him yet. Sam's release from prison was nothing like the freedom he had imagined. The world outside had moved on without him. Streets were busier, prices higher, and the friends he once had were scattered or uninterested. Even his old neighborhood felt foreign. Familiar buildings now painted over, old shops replaced with new names. Adana had arranged for him to work in one of her companies, a logistics branch that managed delivery trucks. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady income. On his first day, walking through the office, he saw her name on the company letterhead and realized the irony: he was now earning a living from the woman he had abandoned. Every time he saw her name, memories of that market afternoon came rushing back. The smell of peppers, the heat on his neck, Janet's perfume, and the look on Adana's face when he told her it was over. Adana, on the other hand, was thriving. She ran multiple businesses with confidence, splitting her time between meetings, charity events, and home. Donald remained her steady partner, calm, protective, and deeply in love with her. Williams was growing fast, his energy filling their mansion with laughter. Cynthia was blossoming into a sharp-minded young woman, eager to learn the business from her mother. Sam saw them occasionally during company gatherings or charity drives. The first time he saw Adana and Donald together, hand in hand, he felt a deep ache in his chest. Not because she was happy, he told himself he was glad for that, but because he had thrown away the chance to be part of that happiness. Years slipped by quietly. When Cynthia turned 20, Adana threw a graduation party in her honor. The venue was filled with bright lights, music, and guests in colorful attire. Sam stood near the back, watching his daughter laugh with friends. She had grown into a confident, graceful young woman, so different from the crying baby he had left in her mother's arms that day at the market. At the end of the evening, Cynthia found him. "Dad," she said warmly. "I'm glad you came." He tried to smile. "I wouldn't miss it. I start working with Mum after the holidays," she added. "I want to help her run everything." Pride swelled in him, mixed with a sharp sting of what could have been. "She's lucky to have you." 4 months later, Cynthia called him with big news. "Dad, I'm getting married." The wedding came quickly, a beautiful ceremony in a large Lagos hall. White flowers lined the aisle, and the air smelled of roses and expensive perfume. Adana, in a soft blue gown, walked Cynthia down the aisle. Sam followed behind, his suit freshly pressed but his mind far away. The man waiting at the altar was Jacob, a young medical doctor with a kind smile. Sam shook his hand, wishing him well, but deep inside, the day felt like another reminder that life had moved forward without him in its center. When Cynthia and Jacob welcomed their first child, a baby girl, Sam visited the hospital. He stood quietly by the crib, looking at the tiny fingers curled into fists. In that moment, he realized this was his second chance to at least be present, even if he could never rewrite the past. Meanwhile, Williams, now a young man, graduated from university as a chemical engineer. He joined Mega Oil, the very company that had changed his mother's life. Donald, still serving as legal advisor, introduced him proudly to the board. At home one evening, Adana watched Williams help Cynthia with some financial planning. Her children were strong, secure, and surrounded by love. She thought back to the day she stood in that market, abandoned and unsure how she would take her next step. Life had been cruel, then unexpectedly generous. One rainy night, Sam sat in his small apartment, listening to the patter against the tin roof. His work at Adana's company was steady, and he had managed to save some money. But it wasn't wealth or status. He thought about it was the weight of choices. He knew people whispered about him how greed and impatience had destroyed his marriage. He didn't argue with their version. It was the truth. Looking out the window, he whispered to himself, "If I had just stood by her that day." Months later, Adana invited him to a family dinner. It was the first time in years they had all sat around the same table. Donald carved the roast chicken while Cynthia poured drinks. Williams told stories from work that made everyone laugh. Sam looked at Adana across the table. "I know I've said this before," he began quietly, "but I'm sorry for everything." She met his gaze, her eyes calm. "I forgave you a long time ago, Sam, but forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. I hope you've learned from them." He nodded slowly. "Every single day." That night, as Sam walked home under the streetlights, he felt lighter. Not because the past was gone, but because he finally accepted it. Adana, standing at her balcony, watched him leave. She felt no bitterness, only peace. Life had taught them both hard lessons, and in its own way, had given each of them a place in the world. Sam would always carry the regret of that market afternoon, but now it was tempered with gratitude that he was still part of his daughter's and grandchildren's lives. Adana turned back into her home, where Donald and the children were laughing in the living room. She smiled. The past was behind her, the future bright, and the scars of yesterday had only made her stronger. What is your view about this story? Where are you watching from? If you enjoyed this story, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories.